So hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my last video I talked about how I scored 330 out of 340 on the GRE exam, after which a lot of you reached out to me asking me how I handled the vocabulary part of the exam. In this video I'll be discussing in detail how I handled that part. Let's start. So the common advice I got from almost everyone when I was preparing for this exam was that you need to memorize more and more words. Get a huge vocabulary list, learn at least 50 words a day, make hundreds of flashcards, memorize synonyms. But here's the problem, you can memorize hundreds or even thousands of words, but still struggle with the exam. Why is that? Because GRE is not testing whether you know the definition of a word. It's testing whether you can recognize and use that word in a particular context. In this video, I'll show you a much more effective way to build your GRE vocabulary without trying to memorize an impossible number of words. So number one, as I mentioned earlier, do not try to memorize thousands of words. Instead, you should aim for around 1000 to 2000 high quality words and focus on knowing them deeply. That means knowing what the word means, how it's used, what kind of words commonly appear with it, its synonyms and antonyms, and the subtle difference between similar kind of words. For example, knowing that the word benevolent means kind is useful, but it's much more useful if you can immediately recognize it in a sentence. For example, the philanthropist was known for his benevolent treatment of the disadvantaged communities. Now you're not just memorizing the definition, you're understanding how the word actually works, and I think that is closer to what the GRE expects. Number two, choose your vocabulary sources carefully. The next question and the most important question is where you should actually be learning these words from. So do not jump between 10 different vocabulary lists and do anything randomly. Just pick up any one high quality GRE vocabulary source and stick with it. You can definitely use resources provided by these GRE prep companies such as Manhattan, along with the official ETS material. I cannot emphasize enough on how important it is to go through the material provided by ETS thoroughly. Another thing that you can definitely do is you can supplement your vocabulary by reading high level English. For example, you can definitely read articles from publications like The Economist, New Yorker, Scientific American, etc. I personally used to read The Economist a lot. And here's an important point. Don't just look for a word and memorize its definition. Look at how the word is being used in a sentence. That's where the real learning actually happens. Next advice would be don't just recognize words, but actually use them. This is one of the biggest difference between students who simply memorize vocabulary and those who retain it. Every day take 3 or 5 words and write your own sentences. Now this is very basic, but I'm still talking about it because it is something that actually helped me. For example, the word mitigate. Don't just remember that mitigate means reducing the severity of something. Instead, write a sentence. For example, the government introduced new policies to mitigate the effects of inflation. Another thing I would do was I would explain the word out loud and all the sentences I would create from that word as if I was teaching to a bunch of students. Another thing that I used to do was I used to read difficult English every day. Here's the thing, vocabulary doesn't exist in isolation. That's why reading is so very important. I used to spend at least 60 minutes a day reading something that would actually challenge me. 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. I used to read opinion pieces, essays, academic writing, on all these science and social articles. But do not make reading completely passive. Every time you encounter an unfamiliar word, first try to figure out its meaning from the surrounding sentence. Ask yourself what the author is trying to say here. Then look for that word in the dictionary. Another important thing that I would always do was after reading the article, I would always summarize it in 2 or 3 sentences at least. If possible, try to use new vocabulary in the summary. Now this does 2 things at once. It improves your reading comprehensions and at the same time it strengthens your vocabulary. Don't spend all your time learning words from flashcards and then expect your scores to improve automatically. That is not going to happen. You need to practice with actual GRE style questions. I would suggest you to pay particular attention to text completion and sentence equivalence. When you get a question wrong or you find a word you do not know the meaning of, don't just look at the answer and move on. Write that word down and most importantly ask yourself what clue in the sentence helped me determine the answer. Also ask why is the correct answer correct and why are the other answers wrong. Because GRE vocabulary questions often contain words that are technically similar but differ in tone or context. So knowing 10 synonyms of a word, let's say happy, is not enough if you cannot recognize which one fits the sentence. Now I'll be discussing about the reviewing strategy. Learning vocabulary is only half the battle. The other half is not forgetting it. Now I had this simple rule that actually worked for me. Every night I would spend about 15 to 20 minutes reviewing my vocabulary, then do a quick self-test. Don't just look at the word and think, oh yes, I remember this. Cover the definition and try to recall it. That is active retrieval. Then once a week, consolidate what you've learned and then try to group words by things like roots, themes, meaning, or register. Here are some of the common mistakes that I need you to totally avoid. Mistake number one, memorizing definitions without knowing the context. For example, knowing that a word means angry doesn't necessarily mean that you know how it works in a GRE sentence. Mistake number two, trying to mug up so many words at once. More isn't always better. If you learn, let's say, 50 words today and forget 40 by the end of the week, then you gained very little. Mistake number three, only reading and never actually producing. Reading helps you recognize words, I'm not denying that, but writing and speaking helps you retrieve them. And mistake number four, and it's a mistake that even I have made a lot of times, that is treating synonyms as completely interchangeable. They are not. Words can differ in context, tone, intensity, formality, and whatnot, and the GRE loves those differences. Now I'll share a 12-week preparation plan for your vocabulary part. I completed it in about 4 weeks, but if you follow the same plan over 12 weeks, you'll have more time to practice, revise, build a much stronger foundation than I did. Week 1 to 4, learn around 8 to 10 new words every day. Use context-based flashcards. Read about 3 challenging articles per week. Write a few sentences using your own vocabulary every day. Week 5 to 8. Reduce new vocabulary slightly, around 5 to 8 words per day. At the same time, increase your GRE practice. Review word roots regularly and keep adding unfamiliar words from your practice questions to your vocabulary deck. Weeks 9 to 12. Now your focus should shift towards retention and application. Learn only around 3 to 5 words per day if necessary. Spend more and more time reviewing the words you've already learned. And around this time, I would suggest you to start doing timed GRE verbal sections. Analyze your mistakes. Make sure that the vocabulary you've studied throughout it actually works in the exam context. The main idea I need you to remember is that GRE vocabulary is not a number game. You do not win by memorizing the biggest word list. You actually win by knowing your words deeply enough to understand how they are used in a context. You win by knowing your words deeply enough to recognize them and to understand in what context they are being used. So if you're starting today and you want a vocabulary list that you can go through or learn words from, then you can drop a comment in the comment section below. I'll definitely provide you with the resources that I used. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Looking forward to making more such videos. And if you're preparing for the GRE exam, all the best.